Hello YouTube, this is Let's Talk Horror and welcome back to another video. Okay guys, so we continue with our Welcome to Derry review series with Welcome to Derry episode 3 entitled Now You See It. I'm not gonna lie guys, after a very strong start to the season with the first two episodes, I loved episode 1. I thought it was a great pilot. Episode 2 I thought, if anything, was even better. I can't lie, while I still thought this was a solid episode, and I want to make that clear, I felt that this was easily the weakest episode of the season and a noticeable step down from the first two episodes. But again, there are definitely things I liked about it, but there was one storyline and one plot element that just kind of fell flat this episode, and we're going to get into that right now. So let me dive right into my review. I really enjoyed about this episode, guys, though, was diving more into the backstory and the character of General Shaw. This episode actually opened with a flashback that relates back to the 1908 Pennywise cycle, and we later come to find out that it follows General Shaw. And just diving more into that character and fleshing out that character and the direction they went with that character in this episode was interesting. We come to find out that he is fully aware of what Pennywise and what it is, and not only that, but he was in Derry in 1908 for that cycle and had an interaction with Pennywise. So it kind of gives this sinister edge to this relatively warm military character. James Remar is really good at, kind of giving a fatherly, warm feeling to a character like this. He did that in Dexter, obviously, and he does it here. And it was kind of cool to see that even though this guy, again, is well-intentioned for the most part and seems warm and almost fatherly, that he has this kind of sinister edge, like he's knowingly uncovering something that, if you don't handle it right, could be disastrous for the human race and for Derry, and he knows how dangerous this, quote, weapon could be, and he doesn't care. He's that focused on winning the Cold War. That's all he cares about, and that's where his focus is. So I kind of like how they kind of give him this morally ambiguous backstory and this sinister edge to this seemingly well-intentioned character. And we also dive a little bit more into Rose and his relationship with the Native American population of Maine and of Derry. And I was interested to see that. So overall, yeah, all the stuff with General Shaw, I enjoyed seeing. I'm enjoying James Remar's performance, and I'm interested to see how that relationship between him and Rose develops, because they clearly have a past and they clearly have a lot of love for each other. But, this episode really establishes there's going to be some tension there. And I like that. I like that they gave this guy, that they kind of revealed that this guy knows fully what he's uncovering and the risk it presents, yet he's willing to do it to win the Cold War. And yeah, we all know this is going to blow up probably spectacularly. So the entire thing with General Shaw, I like that they added more to that character. I like that they fleshed out that character, and I'm enjoying what we've gotten from him so far. The other big part of the military story this week was Dick Halloran. Last week, we really got a solid idea of what his role on this military base is and why they're trying to use him. This week, we expand upon that. We actually get pretty much a confrontation between Pennywise and Dick Halloran, and that was really intriguing to see. It was really intriguing to see Dick Halloran really face once and for all what he's trying to uncover and really come to terms with the danger and the evil he's helping the military uncover. And him, in that one scene with James Remar and General Shaw trying to warn the military and warn the general of, hey, we should maybe stay away from this, and, kind of developing some maturity. What we've seen from Dick Halloran in the first couple of weeks, and the creators have even mentioned that they are going for this, is that this is different from the Dick Halloran we see in The Shining because there's an immaturity there. He has these powers. He knows he has these powers, but he doesn't quite know how to use them. And being a relatively young soldier, there's an immaturity there that he just kind of used this as, okay, I can get some special privileges. But in this episode, we really see him take the next leap in discovering of, oh my God, I am dealing with something completely evil, completely fucked up that I probably shouldn't be messing with. And I enjoyed this character taking that leap in this episode as well, and pretty much trying to warn people, like, even though there's some tension between him and Leroy Hanlon later on in the episode at the dinner scene, Leroy Hanlon, by the way, takes more of a step back in this episode. Him trying to warn General Shaw and trying to warn Leroy Hanlon that, hey, there is something not right here. There is something very sinister about this. There is something very wrong with this, and maybe we shouldn't be uncovering this, and maybe we should just try to find another way or move on to something else, because this could backfire big time. I'm really enjoying Chris Chalk's performance as Dick Halloran so far over these last couple of episodes. I completely buy that it's a younger version of Scatman Carruthers' version of the character, which they said in the little kind of post-episode feature that that's kind of what they're going for, and I completely buy it. And I really enjoyed that kind of next stage, that next leap he took to discovering that whatever they're trying to find, whatever they're dealing with, they can see it and it can see them. And it really raises the stakes and raises the pressure on Dick Halloran and puts him in a difficult position, and I really enjoyed that. And now it's time to get into the part of the episode that I really didn't like, that made this one weaker than the first two, and I just simply wasn't invested in what the kids were doing this week. And in fact, in many points at this episode, I couldn't help but feel that this was just a filler episode, at least when it comes to the kids part of the story goes, and this new kind of quote-unquote losers club that we are following. First of all, one thing I really didn't like, and one thing that really disappointed me early on, just minutes into the episode, was the fact that after spending the first two episodes really making it a big part of her character that Lily is absolutely petrified of going back to Juniper Hill, and that her experience in Juniper Hill was severely traumatic, was terrible, was awful. She does not want to go back there at all. And after the tragedy of doing everything she could, but at the end of episode 2, she's back there anyway, I was looking forward to seeing what the inside of Juniper Hill is like, what her experience in there is like. And within minutes of the episode, she's packing up and she's going home. We didn't see anything inside Juniper Hill, and that was a little bit disappointing to me. That was a little bit odd to me. Maybe we'll see it later in the season, what her experience and what her trauma from inside Juniper Hill is like. But again, to just glide over that after spending 2 episodes really building up that that's her big fear, is going back into that asylum and having to relive the experiences she had in there. It was really disappointing to just glide over that. So that was a big thing that really bothered me. And then just the rest of the episode is just these kids trying to get a picture of Pennywise and trying to figure out how to do that. It wasn't that interesting to watch, quite frankly, but it would have been better if it was building up to a awesome payoff, and that could have, saved this part of the episode if the payoff was awesome. But the encounter we get with Pennywise, and the biggest problem with this section, is the encounter that we get with Pennywise is the weakest of the entire season so far. And the whole cemetery scene at the end of this episode is really weak. And not only because the CGI and the special effects were not up to snuff, which they weren't, but the biggest thing is that the whole cemetery scene at the end of this episode, for those that didn't watch, and again, I'd recommend that you give it a shot, but they try to summon Pennywise, and when they're leaving the cemetery, the form Pennywise takes this week is the ghosts of the children that died in episode 1. And it just comes off as very goofy, as very silly. It doesn't tonally match up with the meaner, nastier edge that I complimented the show on in the first 2 episodes. It just came off as goofy. It just came off as silly, quite frankly. And the CGI was not great. That took me out of it. But again, the bigger issue to me is tonally, it just didn't match up with the tone we had gotten out of the show in the first 2 episodes. You know, the first thought I had was that this feels like a scene out of a Ghostbusters TV show or out of a Goosebumps TV show. That's what this feels like. This doesn't feel like it should be something out of a It TV show. And so, yeah, just a lot of problems with the big ending sequence in the cemetery. And when that's what the entire episode was leading into, and the rest of the episode with the kids wasn't all that interesting, it's a big problem. This is the first time in an episode where I've really just not been that into with whatever this new Losers Club is doing. And it easily makes this episode the weakest of the season. So yeah, for the first time, I can say I just didn't really care with what the kids were doing, and the payoff was just not that well executed at all and just tonally did not fit with the rest of the season. So there you go. Hopefully that explains why I didn't like this aspect of the episode. Okay, guys, that's going to do it for me today. Those are my thoughts on the episode. So once again, I mean, not a bad episode by any means, but especially with the new Losers Club storyline, the kids storyline, it just felt like a filler episode to a certain extent. And the ending and the payoff that we got to that part of the story just wasn't that great in this episode. So again, if you're enjoying the show so far, if you're loving the show coming into this episode like I was, you're still probably going to enjoy this episode. It's still a solid episode of Welcome to Derry. I'm still very much invested in the show and looking forward to what comes next. But this was easily the weakest episode of the season because of the kind of missteps they had with the kids. So that's going to do it for me. Let me know what you thought about the episode in the comment section below, and I will see you guys later. Okay, take care.